And welcome back. We're now going to be talking to an author. He tells me that he's onto his 5th book. His name is Zaid Ismail, and the book we're going to be talking about, and a whole host more time permitting, 21 Days to Live, Embracing Me and the Ecosystem. He is, as I've said, Zaid Ismail, and gives me great pleasure to have him in studio this morning. Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum assalam, jazakallah for having me.
Now, you tell me that your background is in coaching. You've spent many years in the corporate world, and at some point in your life you've decided, enough, I need to get off this mad race that I'm running, or this mad train that I'm on. I need to do a bit of introspection, reflection, and start putting my thoughts onto paper. This, of course, is your 5th book.
That's actually my 1st book.
Your 1st book?
And I'm onto my 5th one.
You're onto your 5th?
Yeah.
So why are you talking to us about your 1st book when there's been so many other books in the pipeline as well?
Because I think there's an important point of departure in this book that kind of set me on this course that I'm on now. Oh. Because since I left corporate, I'm focusing on mental health, life coaching, and writing about mental health.
All right. Why are you so fascinated with mental health, of all things?
At the risk of sounding arrogant, I'm fascinated with it because I believe we're getting it wrong, and I think the evidence points to the fact that we're getting it wrong. I mean, we've never had as much awareness, as many campaigns, and as many professionals, both formally and informally, in the mental health space, yet we have a spiraling issue with mental health.
Okay, so you looking, your 1st book, The Ego. Oh, it's the Egosystem,
yes.
Not the Ecosystem. I beg your pardon.
Yes.
All right, we've got it wrong here on the call sheet, but be that as it may, the Egosystem, of course, the nafs. You are
yes.
so right that I think we get so many things wrong because of the nafs or the ego. It's a synopsis of the human condition. What books come after these? Is it kind of also an almost natural follow-up?
So the reason why I wrote the book that followed on from this one was because as much as I got very positive feedback on this one, I seemed to attract very much the academic and professional reader with this book. And that wasn't my intention. My intention is to try and make this as accessible as possible. So the 2nd book I wrote, which is more about owning your life, builds on the philosophy in this book, but it makes it more accessible to the layperson. So it discusses it with a lot less jargon, a lot less technicality. And I'm getting exceptionally good reviews for that, alhamdulillah, on the sales, and that it's picking up as well. It's also available in bookstores. But the book that's following on from that...
What's that titled?
Well, the book that's following on from that one is the title that I'm releasing end of this month, which is intended for a much broader audience, and especially for an adaptation of that is going to be made available for the Muslim community. And that's called Embracing Me.
Okay.
And Embracing Me is all about understanding why we turned out to be who we are, rather than judging ourselves for not being good enough, or not fitting into someone else's expectations, or not fulfilling a specific stereotype or role that is expected of us.
What does that say about helicopter mothers in this day and age, giving too much too soon to our children, living through our children, being proud of their achievements, pushing them in a certain direction because we were not able to achieve what we had wanted to achieve when we were younger?
I think you actually summed it up quite well in that last statement, is that we try to compensate for what we think we were inadequate at. And we do this with the best of intentions. But like I say, there's no bad intentions, there are only poorly informed decisions. And the poorly informed decision in this case is that when we try to protect our children from the struggles or the hardships that we might have experienced, what we forget is that we are also protecting them from the wisdom that we acquired through it. And then when they faced with it outside of our control, because we can't control everything that they're going to experience in life, when they face it outside of our control and they have a meltdown, or they choose a bad way of dealing with it, we then wonder where we went wrong. And we went wrong because we prevented them from learning about it.
Tough for us as parents to let go, is it not?
It is.
To allow them and know that they're going to be making many mistakes or falling down time and time again. And it's difficult to control yourself from not running to their aid, picking them up, dusting them off, and, kissing them better, so to speak, and then allowing them to go on their way. I'm talking little ones right up to grown adults, because we see that happening all the time.
Completely. The one thing I like to tell my clients is that we're not raising children, we're raising adults. And when we start realizing that we're raising adults, we'll understand that we are grooming that innocent child to be able to be a functional and responsible adult, someone that contributes meaningfully to society, not someone that becomes a liability. So this whole idea we have about you must enjoy your childhood before you experience the responsibility of the world, we're actually putting them on the back foot when we let them go. And we can see it in the divorce rates. We can see it in the social ills that we're experiencing as a community. We can see it in so many different ways. And it's because we don't have, for lack of a better word, or better phrase, we don't have fully formed adults that leave the nest anymore. We have semi-formed adults. And at some point we need to realize that we didn't raise ourselves. So if we're getting it wrong, then that means something went wrong in the way we were raised. Absolutely.
Is all of that contained in your books?
That is unpacked in a very different way, because one of the problems we've got is that we define a problem and then we define a solution for the problem. And the problem with that is that we assume that the way that problem is experienced by everyone is the same. We assume that the reality that we experience and the support structure we have around that problem is the same. So when we go defining a solution for a problem, we assuming that someone else has exactly the same awareness, self-esteem, support structure, upbringing, value system, and all of those things, so that they can apply the solution to a problem that we see.
And we get very frustrated and angry if people don't see things our way, because we expect the whole world to have our worldview.
Exactly. And we expect that because we're not self-aware. We don't stop to consider, and this is in fact something that came up recently in one of my discussions with someone, and I would challenge the viewers to consider this. We assume that if we are married to someone, that we share the same value system, and we assume that by virtue of the fact that we both may be Muslim, that value system is a common one, but it's not. And it's not because Islam provides us with a framework or with a point of reference that we adopt into our lives. Now, yes, if you're the perfect Muslim, then everything that Islam teaches us, we will adopt. But we're not perfect Muslims. So my value system, my personal value system, is informed by my Islamic beliefs, but also by what I've accepted for myself as part of my experience with life.
Well, I've seen it often enough that we are selective Muslims, are we not?
Yes.
We take from Islam what suits us in our very particular or special or unique circumstances, and then we'll take from Islam what fits in at that point in time. And I think the majority of us do that, don't we?
But I agree we do that. My concern is that we don't often enough ask, why do we do that? The assumption is weak iman. And this is actually something that
and our big egos.
And our big egos, right? And both those things, I think, is critically misunderstood in our communities, and by a lot of our teachers as well in the community, the people that share wisdom and insights with us. Because for starters, the moment we start linking things like mental health to poor iman, we're missing the plot completely. And we can maybe unpack that a little later. But the other problem is that we only selective about what we take from Islam because the environment in which we are will potentially undermine our significance as a role player, as a participant, if we try to be better than that. And this is why it's so important for choosing the right social circles and the right groups, and why also it's better to be alone than to be in bad company and all of those things, right? And that's the beauty of the Sunnah. And the more self-aware we are, which is what I focus on completely in everything I write about, it's always about self-awareness, about understanding why we take what we take from life and from experiences and from people. Because the more self-aware we are, the more we'll realize why it is that influence has a hold over us that causes us to choose something less from what we should be taking from Islam. So when we become selective about our belief system, it's because something else holds more importance. And there's something else, not because of weak iman. There's something else is because of a lack of self-awareness. And that's mindfulness. But not mindfulness about what's happening around us. Because that's what everyone talks about. Everyone talks about mindfulness.
Be in the moment.
Yes, be in the moment and situational mindfulness. They always refer to about environmental issues and what you take from someone else and what they're saying and why they're saying it. That's not the mindfulness we need to be focused on. We need to be focused on emotional mindfulness. Why am I in that emotional space when I'm in that moment? Not why is that moment having influence on me? Why am I in that emotional space when I have that moment? Because every single thing that we do is an accumulation, and this might sound philosophical, but we just need to think about this for a second. Everything that we do in every moment is informed by the collection of experiences of our life up until that point. And if what we presented with in front of us at that moment is something that rekindles joyful memories, memories of success, of accomplishment, of recognition, appreciation, we'll go into it with a positive attitude. But the moment, it's not a positive rekindling of memories. The moment, it's something that reminds us about when we may have been ridiculed, when we may have fallen short of expectation or were dismissed or rejected. The moment that happens, we immediately come into that moment in a defensive state. And when we come into the moment in the defensive state, what we're doing is we're looking for evidence that's going to confirm that we are at risk of again being ridiculed or mocked or rejected.
And let's go for our first ad break. Zaid Ismail is an author. He's written 5 books. He comes from the corporate world. He's also a life coach, and he's here to talk about his work. His particular focus is on mental health, and I should imagine the stigma around mental health. We'll be back with you in a minute or two. The final 12 minutes of the show this morning with Zaid Ismail, the author and life coach. 21 Days to Live, Embracing Me and the Egosystem. Earlier on I said ecosystem, but it's the Egosystem. Zaid, coming back to you and the issue around coaching. My producer and I have this joke going on between us about everyone we meet. And that's great that people go into this line of work, because every second person is now becoming a coach or a super coach. In the process, of course, whether you engage with them or not for, becoming your coach and to support you through your crises in life, they have gone through a certain amount of learning themselves, awakening and awareness, self-awareness. So that's great in that respect. But are we not having too many coaches around us?
I think that the challenge we've got is that it's too easy to be certified as a life coach.
Okay.
And as we know, it's an unregulated industry. But more importantly, I think we have a community or society that doesn't understand what they need to look for in whether or not a life coach is good. And in the absence of that, knowledge, that familiarity, what they look for is accreditation with a certified body. The problem with that is that it assumes that the person who acquired the certification has real life experience in being able to guide them out of or into whatever situation it is that they need guidance on. The biggest problem I've seen in the life coaching industry, and this is actually sad because, like I said earlier, there's no bad intentions, just poorly informed decisions, is that people tend to go through a difficult life, and there's no shortage of that, unfortunately. But when they emerge from that space, when they overcome their trial or their struggle, they automatically assume that they are in a position to be a life coach to guide someone else out of it. Now, yes, we must share our wisdom, we must share our learnings, we must share our insights that we picked up through life, and that's how we uplift each other. But it takes on a very different form when you present yourself as a life coach as opposed to a sincere advisor, as a companion. Because when you take on the approach as a life coach, you're attaching a level of authority to what you are saying, that someone else is more likely to believe without critical thinking. And that's the problem, is that when someone engages with a life coach, more often than not, unless they are really defensive or have a number of other different things at play, more often than not, they trust blindly because they go into someone willingly looking for assistance, for help and guidance. And I've seen more cases than I care to count of how poorly informed or poorly skilled life coaches have caused marriages to break up.
Oh.
Have caused bad marriages to happen because they advised people to get together when they were just not suitable for each other, who, without realizing it, guilt people into believing that they needed to do the right thing because their iman was compromised. And it's these kinds of things, and that's just a few examples, but there's no end to the number of examples that I can quote on this, in that just being well-intentioned to want to be able to guide people into a better space doesn't mean that you are capable as a life coach.
What does one look for then in a life coach?
If you're looking for a life coach, you need to, apart from establishing the rapport, and this is one of the problems, because one of the first things we do is we look to see, do we agree with this person? Do they resonate and that sort of thing? But if we're not careful, what we're going to be looking for is who recognizes our struggle and who's going to make us feel better about it.
Sorry, I have a frog in my throat, but be
Sure.
that as it may, let's go back to the book, the Egosystem,
Yes.
and the issues around mental health. What is it saying to the reader? How is it going to enlighten the reader? And by reading the book, will I be able to understand when I'm in a state of ego and when I'm in a state of overcoming my ego?
Brilliant
I'm sure it's
question.
not a self-help, but anyway, that's the
Brilliant
question.
brilliant question, and that actually talks directly to why I chose that name for the book, because one of the failings, and I honestly believe it's a failing of the mental health industry, is that they refer to our ego as something external to us, something that is evil that we need to subdue and that we need to control. We are our ego, and until we get this, we won't realize that we either have a healthy or an unhealthy ego. We either have a healthy sense of self or an unhealthy sense of self. And what determines whether it's healthy or unhealthy is how accurately it's informed. So when we talk about the ecosystem is effectively the cycle we go through in every single moment that informs our behavior and what we take from the responses we get. It's literally a 6-point process.
Can you run through it very quickly? And
Yes.
then my final question to you would be, people who are very selfish, who are very narcissistic, who grab with both hands, and we have all of those in our family, all of us know such people
Yes.
in our communities, are they people that allow their egos to take over?
No.
All right, why not? So what are those people?
Okay, so just to talk about the ecosystem. The ecosystem has 6 points, and I'll go very briefly through it. So the first one is that there is a need, a core need that we need to fulfill. That core need is what we were created with it. And at the essence of it, it's the need to be of consequence, to be significant in every setting that we find ourselves in. That need is then followed by what assumptions we make in our minds, subconsciously most often, about whether or not we are capable of fulfilling that need, or whether the current circumstance is going to fulfill that need. If we're confident about it, because of the assumptions we make is that it looks positive, we'll be less fear and more confidence. If we fear that it's not going to be fulfilled, the fear goes up and the confidence goes down, which is the third point of the cycle, which is fear that we respond to. The fear then informs our behavior, because then we decide to act and take whatever steps are necessary to fulfill that need. Once we've taken the steps necessary, it's only then that everyone else understands what we're trying to achieve, because they weren't privy to that whole cycle that went in our subconscious about what we want to do or what we want to achieve. And when we act, we see their responses, which is the fifth point, the responses to our actions. And based on their responses to our actions, we inform our perception about whether or not they appreciate us, they accepted us, respected us, or whether our behavior was effective in achieving that need. If we have a higher level of self-awareness, we'll focus on the effectiveness of our behavior to achieve that need. Whereas if we have a lower sense of self, what we'll do is we'll look at others and we'll assume they're judging us. And we'll judge them in return.
Okay.
So that's the ego system. Now, if we take that and apply it to a very hot topic right now, which is narcissism. One of the things I mentioned, I think it was offline, is that the moment we attach a label to someone's behavior, we stop seeing the human and we start seeing the label. And this is true for narcissists as well.
And that creates a lot of problems in relationships, does it not?
Yes.
Because you're building up both sides without even being aware of it. Okay, so you are the victim of this narcissistic personality, and you're building up all of this resentment. That relationship can never be healthy.
Yes.
Because every minute of your day, it may be your spouse, it may be your sister, it may be your brother, it might be your, it might be your child, and you're consumed, absolutely consumed by this person's behavior and what the next interaction with this person's going to be like.
Yes, and I know we don't have a lot of time to go because this is a massive topic, right? But the important thing to remember in these situations is that when we assign a label to someone's behavior, we are in fact labeling our experience of their behavior. And that's a critical differentiator, because if we're labeling our experience of their behavior, it doesn't mean that that was the intention behind their behavior.
Okay. So we reacting every time that person is in our space, or we're very defensive. Very defensive, and that too is possibly triggering something in that person, because they pick up on all of those vibes.
We enable the cycle. We actually feed the cycle by labeling it. Because if you're going to call me a narcissist, I'm going to prove to you that you're either wrong, which is going to be narcissistic of me in the first place, or I'm going to prove you right, which is going to be a passive-aggressive way of doing it, right?
Just to avoid all-out confrontation.
Okay, so you believe that about me, so I'll be that way.
Yeah.
What it means is that both the person that's judging and the person that's being judged are both defeating themselves and the relationship.
We've got 2 minutes to wrap up time, and not enough time to have covered this very interesting subject. But what I'm also hearing you saying is that we all of our relationships, you and I, my people back home, the people that I interact with here at work, we're all in this, we're all playing this game.
Yes.
There's this game that we're playing. What's in it for me? What's in it for you? How much are you going to get out of it? How much am I going to get out of it? Yeah. And there's this constant dance that's happening around all of us, all of our relationships. How do we get above that? How do we not get caught in this trap? How do we not get caught in this preconceived idea and responses that's going to happen when I meet you next? Because I've already got it in my mind that we're going to have a confrontation.
Right.
Or you're not going to respond to me the way I expect you to respond.
And you end up preloading your expectations for a certain outcome, and you actually feed that outcome. We create self-fulfilled prophecies, right? The one thing that has always helped me to maintain my sanity in every one of the very colorful experiences I might have had over my lifetime has been that I needed to remind myself that you cannot give what you don't have. So I cannot give someone else respect if I lack self-respect. I cannot give someone else appreciation if I don't appreciate who I am.
Can you give too much love and then get taken advantage of?
No, you can't, because if you give too much love and you get taken advantage of, getting taken advantage of questions what is your expectation out of that giving of love. When it becomes transactional, when you're giving it with the expectation of receiving something in return, then when that is not given, you feel abused, you feel betrayed, you feel let down, disappointed, and all of those things.
So you must give selflessly.
Yes, but selflessly is also a myth on its own, right? Because up until a point, there's always some selfish investment in that, right? But let that selfish investment be that you want to be the best of who you can be.
Okay.
Don't let it be that you want to be seen to be the best of who people have experienced. And that's the problem, is that we so often do something because we want to see how others are going to receive it, rather than what is our purpose behind doing it.
So much more to uncover. We have to have you back in studio
Inshallah.
to unpack the ego and the ecosystem and your books. Where can people buy your books?
This book is available on my website, zaidismail.com. And some of my other books are available in bookstores, but I'll be posting more information about availability soon.
Great. So
especially
people just
after
need
the
to
next
go
one is released, yes.
To your website. You have a Facebook page, I presume?
I'm on Facebook, on Instagram as well, and on Twitter. Twitter, I'm not so active on it, but the rest of them, yes, they can definitely engage with me and tell me what they think.
Lovely to talk to you. Inshallah, have you back in again to pick your mind. And, oh gosh, so many unanswered questions, but we will revisit all of this and more. Shukran for being with us on the show.
Amin. Jazakallah khair.
And that's where we leave it. Wonderful show, wonderful guests. Could sit here talking to them for hours on end, but obviously time doesn't permit that. Thank you for being with me. I thoroughly enjoyed your company. Take care on the roads. Till the next time, as always, it's Khudafiz from me, Julie Ali.